Good evening, everyone. It's Ilse Strauss from Bridges for Peace offices here in Jerusalem, the city of the great King, the most beautiful spot in the entire world. And tonight is the 13th of December, a very special night. It is Walter's mom's birthday, right?
Yes. Well, I wish you were here.
Right.
But, that would be a miracle. That would be a miracle. Yes.
It's also the 7th night of Hanukkah, and tonight we have this dapper young man over here, Walter Bingham, probably one of my favorite human beings in the whole wide world. We have Walter here to light the 7 Hanukkah candles for us. So we've got everything we need. We've got the candles, we've got the sufganiyot, and we've got the blessings.
Hello, everybody. I'm honored to be here to talk with you. And by the way, you know, I never said to anyone I talk to you. People say that. No, it's not to you, it's with you.
With you.
Yeah. So here are the blessings. Let's light this shamash. This is the one with whom we light the candles. And usually I do this in Hebrew, but of course tonight, so that you understand what I'm saying, we'll do it in English. Blessed are you, the Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to light the Hanukkah candles. Blessed are you, the Lord our God, King of the universe, who performed miracles for our fathers in those days at this season.
There we go.
Always takes a little time, there's so many candles. And it would be easier if I could see better.
Oh, you are 100.
So,
One more.
and tomorrow we have to light 8. Takes even longer.
Yeah. There we go. All right. Got it.
We light these lights on account of the miracles, the deliverances and the wonders which you performed for our fathers by means of your holy priests. Throughout the 8 days of Hanukkah, these lights are sacred, and we are not permitted to make any other use of them, except to look at them in order to sing praises in your name for your miracles, your deliverances, and your wonders. And then we sing the Hanukkah song, and I will sing in Hebrew the first verse. Moshe Yeshua Shilochono El Shabeach Tikam Beis Tefilosi V'Sham Todon Shabeach Leis Tochin Matbeach Mitzoham Nabeach Ozek Mo Beshir Mismo Chanukas Hamizbeach Ozek Mo Beshir Mismo Chanukas Hamizbeach.
Chag Sameach, Walter.
Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So, without any further ado, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to this man right here next to me. Walter was born in 1924, I'm correct?
Yes.
1924 in Karlsruhe, Germany. He saw the birth and the rise of the Nazi Party. You once told me you saw a parade, a Nazi parade coming into town. I think you actually went to a different town to go and see the parade. And you mentioned looking at the tanks and seeing that it was paper mache and cardboard, correct? Yes.
That was when the Nazis defied the Versailles Treaty, the peace treaty, that they could, and that in the area where I lived, it was supposed to be demilitarized, and they marched in. But of course, they didn't have everything, so they put on the chassis of a car the superstructure of a army vehicle in cardboard, and
basically, had the world known that, it would have called a bluff, right? Anyway, so Walter lived through the rise of the Nazi Party. He saw Kristallnacht. Was your father taken before Kristallnacht or after?
Yes, before.
Right.
Before.
Walter's father was sent to Poland, where he was in the Warsaw Ghetto, which is the last they heard of him. And then after Kristallnacht, Walter was rescued out of Germany on the Kindertransport. He was taken to Britain, spent some time in a castle in Wales. And when Walter turned 18, he joined the British Army.
No, hold on. You got that. I'm sorry to go back to when I was, not with 80. With 80, I made Aliyah.
Oh, 18.
18. I thought you said 80.
No.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, it's live television, so.
18.
18. Well, it was 20, but it doesn't matter.
All right. Okay. Well, he joined the British Army. Walter fought in the D-Day invasion after the Allied invasion of France. He joined counterintelligence and was then stationed in Berlin, correct?
In Hamburg.
Hamburg. After that, Walter returned to Germany, got married, started a business, became a journalist, father of one daughter. And then at age 80,
yes, Walter
decided it was time to come home to Israel. And he made Aliyah at the ripe old age of 80. His daughter followed.
She was here.
Oh, your daughter was here before that. Two grandsons, one here, one in England. Walter received the highest military honor from the French government for his role during the war. And at the moment, Walter...
One from the king.
Oh, one from the king too. How did I miss that? And today, Walter is in the Guinness Book of Records for the oldest working journalist in the world. Did I get everything?
And I have two records, and the oldest a talk show host on radio.
Okay, so
which I'm still doing now.
Yes, talk show host Walter's World, which you can listen to on Arut Sheva.
Israel National Radio.
Israel National Radio.
And also on Israel News Talk Radio.
And then you can read Walter's article in the J-Post. He publishes quite often. His work is insightful. It basically gives you a glimpse of what Israel is facing at the moment. He touches on all the current issues and he unpacks them in a way that you can only do if you've lived through the worst of history and come out the other side.
So,
now,
my birthday was in fact in 1924, but I think at this point I ought to say it was on the 5th of January, which means that in a few days' time, if God gives me to live that long, I will enter into my 101st year of life, which means I'm 100 years old.
Indeed, we'll have a big party for this one. And usually his parties are attended by the who's who of Israel, the president, the ambassadors. You can always read about Walter in the newspaper who came to his parties, right? Oh, also the skydiving. You want to go skydiving for your birthday, right?
Well, another time, yes. When the weather will permit, I'll do another skydive. I did one for my 95th. That was a long time ago, and now I'm going to do another one, which hopefully allows me to have a minute and a bit and a quarter or so, what they call it,
Bird's eye view.
free fall. You'll have to excuse me, I'm a bit forgetful. Free fall,
Wow.
if it works out.
I'm not joining you on that one. I'm sorry.
You might read about that, but
I'll go and
I have to reach.
shoot.
I have to reach. I live every day for every day. I'm grateful to the good Lord to allow me to live and have all my faculties and my movements. I can still walk. I have no spare parts in my legs, you know. And so I live from one day to the next, hoping I will reach many more healthy years.
So, Walter, there's a specific reason we want to speak with you tonight. And I want to go back to the years when the Nazis was on the rise. And what we want to speak about is never again. You published an article in the Jerusalem Post a few days ago, and you spoke about fighting in the Second World War, in the D-Day invasion. And you said that you fight because you believe that never again would be a reality after the war, but it didn't turn out that way, correct?
Well, you know, we think, and there's a saying in German, and I will say it, and then you can translate it. Der Mensch denkt und Gott lenkt.
The man thinks and God laughs.
God drives.
God drives.
Drives. God lenkt.
Oh, yeah,
that is
yeah,
to drive.
yes.
To find. So it's all in God's hands. Whatever religion you are, we have the same God, and in those days they were very tough. I fought, you know, when you are in the army, as I was in the British Army, every soldier gets called up. He has to go because he gets called up, or he wants to fight for his country. Refugee soldiers like me who joined the army didn't have a country to fight for. I had certainly not for the Germans, and I'd only just arrived in England. So the motivation for people like me was much stronger. We fought against. We had nothing to fight for, but we fought against in order to find our family and all that. So that's why we did things that perhaps soldiers don't generally do unless they're very brave. And in my youth, of course, Hitler came to power. Oh, I ought to say that I went to school in 1930, 6 years old, and Hitler came to power in 1933. The government before that was set up after the First World War. It was called the Weimar Republic. And during the Weimar, my first 3 years at school were under the Weimar Republic, which meant everything was more or less normal. There was always some anti-Semitism under the surface, but my life at school was normal. I got the ball when everybody else played in the schoolyard, until Hitler came to power on the 30th of January 1933, and then everything changed. And then my school years after that were not very happy, because, as you can imagine, the children were the children of the Nazis who voted for Hitler, and the teachers had instructions. So whatever happened at school, where I was shunned and I was hurt and I was chased, and when I went to the teacher, nobody reacted. And you know what else? I sat next to an Aryan boy Stop me when it's too long because I can go on for hours.
I know you can.
I sat next to an Aryan, a German boy, and he, as one does at school, he copied from me. And he got good marks, and mine were bad. And if I lifted my finger to answer a question the teacher asked, I wasn't called anymore. I mean, I may have been wrong. I'm not saying that I was right, but the teacher could not take a chance that a Jew should know something. And so that was more or less a pattern in my early school years.
I want to ask you, was the anti-Semitism gradual, or did you wake up one day and things were radically different?
Well, it changed immediately. Hitler came to power
Mhm.
when I went to school.
Mhm.
I didn't enjoy going to school anymore. And of course, it was anti-Semitism immediately because the teachers they were probably briefed what to teach. And the children, as I said before, were the children of the Nazis who voted. So they were indoctrinated at home and they had to go to Hitler Youth. Because if you didn't go to Hitler Youth or didn't send your children to Hitler Youth, you might lose your job, especially if you were working for some state institution. Even ordinary employers, they got to go to Hitler Youth. Now, at Hitler Youth, they were also indoctrinated. The first thing they were taught, they were put into uniform. I should have brought that.
You should have.
Yeah. They were put into uniform in a military rank structure. Everything was in all the organizations that they founded was military rank structure, so that they will become the soldiers of the future. And they were indoctrinated that everything was the Jews' fault. You know, the First World War was a Jewish conspiracy. Did you know that?
Oh,
It was a Jewish conspiracy because they wanted to dominate the world. There was a very big, in 1939, there was a very big inflation in Germany where people walked around with suitcases of money, milliards of money. And that was all the fault of the Jews because they wanted to, that was so that they could make money. And that was the spirit of the day. And that was what we had to suffer. So it was a very slow strangulation of Jewish life throughout Hitler's reign. I mean, that conspiracy theory was before Hitler.
Right.
When he was still in his early years.
What I suggest, and what Walter just mentioned that he should have brought along, was a Hitler Jugend rule book.
No, not the dagger. All this, you know, I ought to explain that Hitler wanted to rule the world, certainly capture the East. The songs used to reflect the fact that the aim was to go to the East, Russians take over the Eastern Russia. And of course, you can't do that with 100,000 men under arms, which was a stipulation of the peace treaty. The peace treaty said you can only have 100,000 men. That's when, as you said, they marched into the Rhineland at the time with these phony trucks. And so he thought, how can I get a big army? He founded a lot of paramilitary organizations. You know one or two, you know SS, for instance, but there were very many, even sports organizations, women's organizations, the people who built the motorways, the autobahns, they had to exercise in the evening, and their uniforms were military rank structure from the highest rank here to the lowest. And so that they had all these paramilitary organizations, and they were all trained to be soldiers because then he would have a big army. Now the Hitler Youth was exactly the same, and all those organizations had a ceremonial dagger. And this is what I forgot to bring. The Hitler Youth had a dagger as well. I have that dagger, and on the dagger is engraved. And the Hitler Youth from age, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, they gave them a dagger, and it was a sharp knife, and on the blade is engraved, I engraved the words in German, Blut und Ehre, blood and honor. So I figured, what does it mean? Well, I said it meant Jewish blood. But now you will ask me, of course, immediately, why Jewish blood? Because they were singing songs, the Hitler Youth, as they marched. When Jewish blood spurts from the knife, everything goes so much better. And these were the boys who were in the morning and afternoon at school with me, and in the evening had to change into uniform and marched up and down the street, and I had to listen to it.
Now, Walter, I think we'll have an interview with you again right before Holocaust Memorial Day, but what I want to speak to you about tonight is, you mentioned now that before Hitler's rise to power, everything was the Jews' own fault. Hitler even said, and the high-up Nazis said, that everything that happened to the Jewish people, literally, the Jews were guilty of their own extermination. They were to blame for that. And that's something that we see raising its head against today.
Absolutely.
After October 7th, that's the one thing you hear repeated over and over and over again. Oh, this slaughter of the Jewish people, their own fault. Can you explain for us what that means to you, and how do you address that?
Well, of course, unfortunately, I am living through a similar situation again today. I've always said for several years now in my talks and my articles that we're living in a period of time that's equivalent to the 1930s. Well, today I have said we are living in the year 1938, which the war broke out in 1939, which was the Holocaust, beginning of the Holocaust, the Kristallnacht, the night when they burned all the synagogues and arrested 30,000 Jews in the concentration camps, killed 91 Jews, and destroyed a lot of Jewish property and homes. This is the period we're living in now because they're doing it there. That was the time when these hooligans in uniform, the SA, the Sturmabteilung stürmt, the brown shirts, were going down the street hunting for Jews. And what have they done now? Exactly the same. They're hunting today. We're hunting for Jews, and the rest you have read. The details are too gruesome to actually read or talk about. I mean, people say talk about rape and kidnap and murder, but I don't think they talk about putting babies into ovens and turn the oven on. Those were the times, and it's similar to what they did in concentration camps. They had no qualms of cruelty, and that same cruelty is today. And unfortunately, in those days, the world didn't listen, and today the world is not listening. Already, the latest news is that U.S. President Biden is talking about peace treaties and things like that. Well, as Netanyahu, our prime minister, said, we are not interested. We have to finish the job. We have to finish Hamas, and there will be no Hamastan in Gaza after the war is finished, and there will be no Fatah. Fatah is the organization of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas. We won't even allow them. We don't want anybody there who will possibly start again. Because, Fatah and Mahmoud Abbas is paying his people to kill Jews. It's called pay to slay. And the more Jews you kill, the more the family gets. And when they're in prison, they get a stipend. So we're not going to have any of those in Gaza. I'm not sure what he has in mind. I've got my own ideas, which I base on what happened in Nazi Germany at the end of the war, where I was and saw. But that's quite another matter. Let's finish the job first, and then we talk about the day after.
Now, Walter, I remember October 7th, and you flew out on October 8th, right? You flew to Germany, and I remember speaking with you that morning, and I said to you that I believe that the world is going to look at Israel differently. However, the exact opposite happened. Instead of empathy, maybe the empathy lasted for an hour or so, but instead of empathy, it was like blood in the water. It was like all the anti-Semitism that was simmering under the surface rose to the surface like a volcano. Why did that happen?
When Kristallnacht happened, it was well prepared. That's the night of the broken glass, in the 9th to the 10th of November 1938. It was well prepared, and all the Nazi offices in Germany, Austria, and the by then Nazi-occupied part of western part of Czechoslovakia, they all had detailed instructions what to do, but they needed to wait for a trigger, for something that said, yeah. And when the Nazi that was shot by a Jewish boy in Paris died of his wounds on the 9th, in the morning of the 9th, or afternoon of the 8th, or morning of the 9th of November, there were orders went out. I think they had a teleprinter service between all the officers. The orders went out. This is it. Go for it. And that's when Kristallnacht happened. Now, here we have exactly the same thing. It was well prepared, all the orders. They had all the orders to do those terrible things, to kill and to murder and to rape. They only waited for not the trigger, but the order.
The order.
And then they got the order, and it was exactly the same. They did. They didn't care with the good. Now, interestingly enough, today the world says, and the universities, as you probably read in America, say, well, that it depends. Why? But asked, why didn't you do anything? What do you think about this slaughter? Well, it all depends. They said, it all depends on the circumstances. Well, that's a terrible thing to say, and altogether, it's exactly the same as it was in those days, and as you said, it's our own fault because we, so it said, oppressed Gaza, oppressed the Gazans, and they rose up. But do you know that in 2005, all Jews, all Israeli, every Jew went out of Gaza. We gave it over to them. We left the place, even took our dead. They exhumed the dead who were Jewish dead who were buried in those places that we had in Gaza, and took them away and left them a beautiful place. They could have made a Singapore of it, and all the money that the world sent them to build up the country. What did they do? Hamas actually took over, and that was in 2005. Hamas took over in 2007. And what did they do with all the money that was sent to them to reconstruct their country and make it nice? That went underground, building a system of tunnels, attack tunnels, so that they could attack us. Instead of building the place up, we gave them greenhouses that were beautifully produce market gardens, produce lettuces that were free of bugs because they had a special system. And we gave them the greenhouses, and you know what they did with them? Dismantled them, smashed up the glass and everything else, and used a metal frame to melt down and make rockets.
Right.
That's what happened. And this is what, unfortunately, the world doesn't seem to see that at all, that we actually went out of Gaza. You read in the paper, we occupy Gaza, but we didn't occupy Gaza. Since 2005, there wasn't a Jew there. So why all this attack on it?
There is absolutely no basis for it. There's no foundation of truth. And the only reason for this is anti-Semitism, the oldest hatred in the world.
It's very easy. You know, whenever there is anywhere in the world a government has a problem with its economy or with its politics that go wrong, and you have to blame somebody, and it's well tested and tried, blame the Jews. And that is what's happening everywhere where there is a problem. And that Germany had a very big problem after the First World War, blaming the Jews. And today, the people in Gaza, the residents of Gaza, they also have a problem because all the money that the world sent, millions and millions and millions to them, that was went into the bank accounts of the leaders. Right. The main leaders of the Hamas live in Qatar, in hotels and living up the high life. And the people in Gaza really had a tough time. They were kept down. Right. Maybe they didn't realize it, and now they put the blame, of course, on the Jews.
So 85 years ago, it was the Germans, it was the Nazis. 85 years later, it's Hamas. But basically the same thing stands behind it. It's just the face that differs.
And of course, people like I have to, it's particular for me, and people like me, it's particularly difficult because you've seen it all before. And then you had, as you started with the words, never again.
Right.
We said in those days, never again. And when you hear the words today, they sound hollow.
Well, there's one thing that's different, Walter, and that's that I'm sitting here with you. And I'm sitting here in an office of a Christian organization, and the people watching over there, they are hundreds of thousands of Christians who will not be silent. And you know me, I struggle to keep my mouth shut. And for once, it comes in handy. So never again, it also means that never again will you sit here alone. Never again will you face this alone. The church was silent maybe in the Holocaust, but we won't be silent now. We're here and we're speaking out.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we appreciate the support of the particularly evangelical Christian communities in the world. I have many contacts, and I hear from them, and I have friends like Ilse here. And we very much appreciate that support. And I know that it's not just words. I know, particularly Bridges for Peace, I know some of the details of what they are doing and what they've done since October the 9th, the 7th, and that they are continuing to be our friends, and you out there are our friends. I hope you understand why IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, are continuing there. You know, I have to say, we hear, oh, we are killing so many if you watch, I watch Sky here, I don't have BBC, watch Sky News, and what do I see? Every day, pictures of poor and dead and of dead people in Gaza, dead Gazans. And then they say, well, there are more dead Gazans than there are dead Jews. So obviously the Jews are revolted, they're killing more. The question I want to ask you out there is, you remember in World War II, there were more Germans killed than British. Does that mean that the British were at fault because there were more Germans killed? And what about Dresden in Germany? That was flattened. And what about Hiroshima and Nagasaki? That was flattened. No consideration for the civilian population. Suddenly, because it's Israel, they're making this big thing about the population. And then, of course, children. We're killing so many children. Well, half the population in Gaza are under 18. And they're not children, the 18-year-olds and the 17-year-olds. They are part of the terrorist organizations. So you have to really look a little bit deeper. Look at the news behind the news. Look what they're saying and why they're saying it. And of course, this is the old maxim of Dr. Goebbels, the propaganda minister of the Nazis. If you tell a lie long enough and often enough, it sticks. You throw mud, it sticks. And that is exactly what they have done and what some of the anti-Semites are doing. You repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, and of course the people believe it.
Another thing is that the numbers provided of the casualties in Gaza comes from who? Hamas.
Yeah,
So if there's an organization who is absolutely dedicated to destruction and they murder and they rape, you can also expect them to lie. Not only that, but apparently the satellite images of Gaza show no evidence of 15,000 people being buried. So chances of that being a lie, that's quite good.
Well, of course, there are unfortunately many people still buried under the rubble. So Israel blamed for that, of course. But it's Hamas who started it. The population in Gaza is now slowly waking up. I've seen on the Al Jazeera, which is the Muslim television station, where people have come out openly on a Muslim station openly and said that Yahya Sinwar, who is the man they're looking for now, the head in Gaza now, in Gaza itself, that he should go to hell.
Right.
And people said he is ruining us. And now Netanyahu made an appeal to them and said, don't fight for Sinwar, for the life in Sinwar, surrender. And many hundreds of them have surrendered. What we're going to do with them, I don't know. Because if you want to hear me, you might not agree with me, all Hamas terrorists should be killed. And the leaders, none of them should die a natural death. Because if we now you've got all these prisoners, now what are we going to do with them? Now we have them, it would be inhumane now to kill them. You can kill them in a battle, but you can't line them up against that. This is not what we do, and this is not Jewish, and it's not Christian, it's not moral. We can't line them up and kill them. What are we going to do with them? Now we have to be re-educated. This is very hard. Look, in Germany, it took many generations to get the poison out of the people, and it's still there, some of it. Still, some of it is there, of the poison. You still have the neo-Nazi organizations that have risen, and it's difficult. So we're now going to have all those Hamas fighters that have surrendered.
That's a mess.
I don't know what they're going to do with them, because I'm sure we're not going to kill them.
No,
They're living.
most definitely not.
They should all be killed in battle. I mean, I would not have taken.
It's really interesting, the conspiracy theories that says, oh, Israel started October 7th, they orchestrated it itself in order to regain Gaza. And I'm thinking, there's no win situation for Israel after October 7th. It's between a rock and a hard place, because you go to war, you lose. You might win physically, but the public relations war is brutal.
You know that that the instructions to the Gazan population was leave the north and go to the south. And as soon as that came out, the propaganda machine of Hamas and other people said, aha, they're sending them all to the south so that they've got them all together and kill them. Some of those things, their propaganda machine is much better than Israel's.
It's brilliant.
Israel's PR machine was poor. We thought the world understands us and understands what's going on, but they didn't, and they fell for the fake news that the Palestinian Authority here in what you call the West Bank and what the Hamas put out. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I could go on for hours to tell you stories of my thoughts in my life. If you go to Google, you put in the words Walter Bingham, Israel, make time, make some days. You can read everything, how I think, what I think, and you can also Walter Bingham, Jerusalem Post, and you can go to Israel National Radio, Walter's World, or to Israel News Talk Radio, which is the Walter Bingham file.
Also, you just joined Instagram, right?
Yeah, you can follow me. I know that's a new thing. It's been put to me I should be on Instagram, so they put me on Instagram, so you can follow me on Instagram. There are little videos on there about all kinds of things of my life, and you go become a follower. I think it's been on there about a week. I think I've got 300 and something people already, and some of the videos have been watched by five-figure numbers, five-figure numbers. And in the very near future, you will be able to. Is this a plug for me? In the very near future, you can see many of my programs, sound programs, or you can hear many of my sound programs from 2020 onwards on Spotify. We're putting it on Spotify and then press the button to make it live. So you can see, go and look them all up on Spotify. And you mentioned my trip on the
right.
Say what?
Right. But for that, we'll have you on right before that comes out, and we'll tell the people about that. Yes, the Kinder Transport one.
Okay.
So we'll have Walter on again. For now.
Well, thank you very much for listening to my stories and sometimes incoherent. You know, when you are in a few days, God gives me reach 100, then. Then some of the things you have to take with it, like poor eyesight, poor hearing, but as for the rest, thank the God, good Lord, I'm okay. I'm fine. And where I pray, in the place where I go on Shabbat, on Saturday to pray, they don't, they usually Jews wish you until 120. That's because Moses lived to 120. So the old saying is live to 120. But where I live, they realize now that that's a bit short. So they say 180. In fact, when people say to me 120, I begin to wonder, wait a minute. You know, it comes to mind somebody dies at 103. Quite a nice age. Oh, he lived to 103. And then I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm going to be 100. Another 3 years, that's all. and you get a bit worried. And you know, because if you have all your faculties and everything, then you can't. You know, and with that, I think I have to finish. I don't realize that I'm old. If I speak to my good friend Ilse, I think I'm her age. If I speak to somebody younger, I think I'm that person. The person who's putting me on Instagram, the young lady who suggested and comes up and does it all for me, she's 28, and I think I'm 28. So it's very, very difficult when you have all your faculties. Now, what did I want to finish with? I've forgotten. You see, that's my memory. Oh yes, 120. Well, the Twin Tower affair was 22 years ago, and for me it was like yesterday. If I think of that, I think, wait a minute, I'm going to be 100. 120, I'm passing 120, 22 years. It's very, very, very difficult to compare. But anyway, I'm here and I'm living, and as I said, for the next day, and with God's help, I shall live a few more years.
Absolutely, because we want you around for another few years, right?
So happy Hanukkah. And of course, if I don't see you before, I wish you a very, very happy but meaningful Christmas. Unfortunately, that meaningful is for most people going by the wayside. You ask people go and ask some children in the street, what does Christmas mean to you?
Presents.
And what you get? Presents and parties.
Right.
That's what you get. And the real reason for it is forgotten. So I wish you a very merry and meaningful Christmas.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. This is Walter Bingham and Ilse Strauss saying Chag Sameach from Jerusalem. Good night.